Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. Joseph Parker's promoter, David Higgins, he has been written off by some observers this week as a nutter, a drunk, a druggie, a disgrace, and many other things, after an outburst and subsequent ejection from the first Joseph Parker Hughie Fury Fight Week press conference. So at face value, it would be easy to accept or believe any of those things based on what we've seen. But that ignores the obvious tactical wins Higgins has secured for his fighter, Joseph Parker, which I will outline and give my thoughts on. Okay, let's go. So at the heart of the issue, well, it was the British Boxing Board of Control's appointment of English referee Terry O'Connor for the fight. He is English, so it went against the fight contract and WBO rules which stipulated a neutral referee. And throw in also, he'd reffed Fury's past two fights, and he had a bit of a history. There were a few things on his record that maybe he had the odd black mark, so people were talking about that. So the big news and development since Higgins' press conference outburst is the Board of Control has now folded and made a change of referee and appointed Marcus McDonald. So it sounds like a big win for Higgins, right? Well, sort of. Because all that's really happened is there's been a rearranging of the deck chairs, with the fellow Brit being swapped into ref, and O'Connor will now fill the judging slot McDonald originally had been appointed to. You might be asking, well, how the heck does having O'Connor as a judge help Parker? For me, the real win that Higgins has achieved here from the major fury over a home country judge is that the issue is now so public, so under the microscope, that any hint of impropriety on fight night would become a massive story and dent the credibility of one, the board, and two, anyone involved in the fight. So you can expect any official involved in this fight will be looking to play things with a really straight bat and avoid courting any controversy. You can bet your bottom dollar on that. So Higgins has boxed the officials into a corner on this one. He has even the ledger, so to speak, for his fighter, Joseph Parker, who was already facing the obvious disadvantage of fighting away from home. Let's face it, a partisan crowd can sway judges. We've all seen it before. The oohs, the ahs, they can have an impact on scorecards, and a point or two here or there for the home fighter, that can be the difference. I mean, some fans, boxing fans, say that Joseph Parker has indeed benefited from this, from fighting at home in New Zealand. So while neutral refs and judges might have been in place for those bigger fights that he's been in, it would be naive to deny they couldn't at least have been influenced by the raucous crowd. So don't get it twisted now. I'm not saying he lost those fights. But just consider that any individual can potentially be influenced by a raucous home crowd. That's the point. So what we have here is Higgins, through the media, has deliberately exerted pressure on all and sundry about the ref situation. But really, it's more a broad attack to try and nullify not only the referee, but the judges too. He's probably done as much as he can on this front now, and he certainly did it quite vocally. I know some fans will be scoffing and saying, well, Higgins, he's been acting like a raving lunatic. But actually, if you step back here, look at what's actually happened and what the result is. He's executed a deliberate plan. Remember, Higgins did not just shoot from the hip earlier in the week when the issue first came up. There was a massively detailed and lengthy statement that was sent to media by his company, Duco Events. I have that statement because I asked for it after seeing the first stories blitz the airways and appear online. It wasn't put together on a whim. It was likely some days in the making, and the media were always going to lap it up. It was the first salvo in a communication strategy to front foot the Terry O'Connor appointment and control the narrative in the media. When you do what Duco did, your storyline is the one that's out there being told, leading bulletins. The Board of Control, it was on a hiding to nothing with its reactive response, because a particular narrative which was planted by Duco was already in the minds of boxing fans and the general public. So going into the press conference, Higgins and Duco had momentum on the referee issue. So the so-called unplanned outburst by Higgins sent the story into overdrive. I mean, for me, the beef at the presser was designed for maximum impact. And I outlined this more in detail in my last video on this issue. I've put a card on screen here, so check it out if you want. I also firmly believe Higgins has had a dual purpose for his comments and behaviour this week. He actually needs to create a bit of beef here so he can actually heighten the interest in the fight to draw in pay-per-view buys in New Zealand and Australia. And why? Well, his company Duco owns the broadcasting rights and gets the revenue from those two markets. I know there will be some doubters at what I'm saying here, but look how neatly this has all turned out for Higgins. The fact that the board, with its back down of sorts, it's actually, by default, vindicated Higgins' position. I'd say his plan has been executed to a T. I mean, perhaps we should be calling him the conductor on this one because he has been directing traffic on the issue. He's got what he wanted. And actually, in our minds now, we're just, you know, in general, I bet you're sort of like, well, I bet the officials won't want to step out of line on this one. They'll want to play it straight. I mean, and that's exactly what he wanted. So he may not have got a neutral referee, but he's got the next best thing. And really, that's probably as good an insurance policy that he can have, should Parker not actually knock out Hughie Fury. Because if it goes to the cards, well, he wants to have the playing field as level as possible. And certainly we've all been lapping up this week. It's been very entertaining. But it is worth noting with these things, there's always other people in the background here who've been instrumental in how these things turn out. So I'd say a hat tip for Duco's Craig Stanaway, the communication and media director, is probably in order here as well, because he would have been a big driver behind the plan to front foot this issue earlier in the week. Also, this publicity, it's going to drive a few more people through the live gate. I don't think there's any doubt about that. And if there's any more niggle this week, well, that's all the better because people are expecting it now. So if the Manchester Arena can get closer to 10,000 people for this fight, then that's a win for Hennessy Sports, it's a win for Duco, it's a win for everyone involved in the build-up. So I just thought I would sort of finish off this piece on this because I really do believe it was a deliberate strategy and it's paid dividends for David Higgins and Duco, and more importantly, for Joseph Parker, because this is what it's all about. Making sure that they do the best job for him. And I actually think they have. What do you make of this? Drop a comment, hit like, subscribe. Follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.
The British Boxing Board of Control has offered that compromise, which we'll accept, and I think regardless, the officials are going to be under a lot of scrutiny anyway because of all the fuss.
He definitely proved the point and everyone heard it, so now I think everyone's aware.
I think Dave did a really good job getting the referee changed.
The eyes of the world are going to be on these officials, and I'm sure that they want to be seen to do a good job. I think it would be very risky for any official to not be fair.
You know, they were standing pretty steady over the last week to 10 days, saying that these are going to be the officials, this is your referee, lump it. Well, we've got it changed, so I think good work by our team.
You know, if I was Joseph Parker, I would be delighted, you know, to have a man stand up for me like what David Higgins did for his fighter. You know what? In my boxing career, I had to basically stand up for myself. But to have a man like Higgins there, David Higgins there, to stand up for his fighter, that's what you want. Now he can do his fighting in the ring because, you know, outside of the ring, my fight's been done by my manager, my promoter.
Could you be the new Don King of boxing? Are we going to see this again this week?
No, I'm honest.